Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Austin Linney here. We got Mr. Wil Slickers. How you doing, my brother?
Doing good. I'm on a nice little high of podcasting today, just kind of like you. I haven't done.
There we go, man. We're riding the podcast high. I just did Wil's podcast, so he's going to come on and do mine. We're going to talk hotels, hospitality, all mindset, all this stuff. I'm excited because I don't really know his story that much. We've talked a little bit, so this is kind of me with my guest figuring out your story. So I'll let you start wherever you want, my brother, and we'll go from there.
Sweet. We'll start from the beginning, man. I'm a seventh child of seven. I got a twin brother, 5 sisters, come from a big family, used to being around people. So always had that like class clown type mentality, personality. Like I was in that clique that was involved in every clique, if that makes sense. So never had like one friend group. I was friends with everybody. Yeah, I can relate. I was like, yeah, it felt weird. Like, and I look back at it now and it's like, okay, I remember just being uncomfortable, like in high school and in middle school, just because I didn't know like I belonged anywhere. And I have a brother my twin brother has Down syndrome, and like all my sisters are older. So I've always felt like that, like middle in between. But anyways, moving on, big family, used to being with people, barely graduated high school. I had a drug addiction and a few other, compulsive bad behaviors like lying and trying to feel included and find like that one sense of belonging, and always searching for other things. It never worked. And I became very, very depressed, attempted suicide. It did not work. My best friend, discovered me before I tried, and it was just, it was one of those kind of like, oh shit moments. Like, how did I get so, how did I get so far away from like being that happy kid? And then I thought I was going to have a kid, and thankfully it was not the case. But I joined the Army National Guard to kind of get out of the situation I was in, not making any good money, wanted to like better myself, and had that like waking up moment. So I joined the Guard at 19, actually 18. And then, went through that and came back like a whole new man, became a camp pastor at a camp, and went to Bible college for a little bit and dropped out. And yeah, it was a little crazy.
So a couple of things. Holy crap. You just blew me away. So what was the drug of choice?
Pills, Percocet.
And
a few, yeah.
And because you didn't have like, you didn't feel like, do you feel like the crowd you were around, or like you just as your own self didn't have strong footing on where you stood in this world?
I think both. Definitely, I was easily influenced. I always wanted to impress people and be like, that guy that people talk about. I'm like, oh man, Wil Slickers, like that guy is crazy, or he is so humble, or whatever. Like I wanted to be whatever to everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's just because like how I was up, I was raised. I wasn't spoiled, and I didn't have an easy childhood. That's for sure. With having, siblings with disabilities, you kind of get forgotten about a lot. And I love my parents for like doing what they did, and wouldn't change that aspect. But I think I was just always looking. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know where I belonged, kind of sense. And so hanging with those people that did it, and then also feeling that desperate need to feel something, in a sense, like to always be chasing new, to always feel excited and amped up. I never wanted to mellow. I never wanted to level out or feel anything below high, like emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. Like I wanted that rush. I needed it. It was just a need. Like I didn't know how to not feel that.
Yeah, we're super similar. My uncle came to me and he was like, dude, the pedals either slam through the floor or it's off. It's the other way around. There's no in between with me. And
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
me and you hit that same spot where I'm trying to understand, like, there is balance, but more importantly, there is beauty in calming yourself down and taking it in. So when you went into the National Guard, because I tried to go in the Coast Guard 3 different times personally. They wouldn't take me because my broken face and then asthma. But I thought I needed it personally. What did
Yeah.
that give you? Did it give you a sense of belonging or like discipline, or what do you think that shook something loose that switched the narrative?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things. I've always been that skinny kid. I never was tall. Like I just grew to like 5'10", like at 24 years old. And so I was always short. Like I was that kid in high school that, yeah, never peaked, never did anything like that. And so when I joined, I was just like, I was at that super low already. And I think to like, when you think of like the military and basic training, they break you. They're supposed to break you down. And I was already to the point, like I was broken. Like I knew I was broken down. So it was like, all right, well, if I'm already broken, then they can't break me anymore. The only way to go is up. And so I kind of just went in with that mentality. I weighed 100 and I think 10 pounds going in. I came out weighing a 155, and yeah, that's what 3 meals
Like an
a day and
animal.
yeah, proper exercise and 3 meals a day, and just I took it serious. Like I definitely goofed off at times when maybe I shouldn't have, or wrote a letter when I should have been taking notes or whatever. But at the end of the day, like I took it serious, and I just remember like graduating, and that like I wasn't always close. I was never really close to my dad, but on my day of graduation, I think is when it hit me, and I knew he was coming to see me, but I didn't know he was bringing my brother, my twin, and he flew. I think it was 5 hours to spend 2 hours with me, and then 5 hours back. So he surprised me, not only my twin brother, but then he like really like we actually like talked for the first time. We went played pool, and like he gave me a hug, and I heard him scream my name when I walked on stage, and took my shook my drill sergeant's hand and all this stuff, and I was like, holy crap, like this is something I never experienced. And then just coming home, I had a whole new confidence. But your body's feeling good, you're looking good, people are starting to notice, like the change. And then I think when you see that, the momentum just kind of carried itself.
And you know what it is? Because I see the same myself and you.
Mm-hmm.
You completed a promise that you made to yourself, and you finished them.
Yeah. That's another thing I'll say too. That was the first time I actually did something consistently in my life.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It took me to 34 years old to realize that it had nothing to do with my brother, my dad, my mom. It had to do with the broken promises that I kept having inside of me that were destroying me inside.
Yeah, and never finishing anything, like always starting and never finishing that. Like if you feel incomplete in your life already, and then you don't complete things, you're going to continue to feel incomplete. Like it's crazy, right? You would never think, but like now putting it into words, I actually never thought about it in that sense, but like, yeah, never completing anything will continue. You'll never find that.
And there is a net, because I don't have a great relationship with my father. We're working on it all the time, but there's an innate thing with a father and a son where, I don't want to discount what your brother's going through or what he's been through his whole life and what your parents had to sacrifice to make sure that he's okay. We don't want to, I want to make sure that people understand that. But you're a human just like everybody else. And I would imagine that, and I'm going to say it and you might get chills right now, hearing your dad's voice yell out your name when you're walking across stage had to have been the best feeling ever.
Bro, I cried like a baby. I get teary eyed just thinking about like I cried like a baby at that moment. Like we were playing pool afterwards. We had a few hours, and then all of a sudden, like he was supposed to stay or be there longer, but there was a storm coming in, and all these flights were being canceled, and he didn't know. Like it was just like a crazy rush of trying to get home and make sure everything was okay, because he's still got job and everything. And so he had to like rush back to the airport, and it was a good 2.5 3 hour drive. And I just remember like the last like conversation, like we actually talked for the first time, using real words, making eye contact, having a hug, and then all of a sudden just like he left and I walked back into that pool room and like the arcade area we were at, and I just looked, the cashier lady was giving me a soda, and I lost it. I bawled, and she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "I just had the most like perfect day," and it was 2 hours of my time.
So funny enough, my brother's 7 years apart from me, and when my parents separated, he went with my dad, I went with my mom. We don't have much of a relationship. We're working on it. I had breakfast with him like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and I drove from Houston to San Antonio, which is probably like a 3-hour drive. And I think I floated the entire drive home, because that's a human that lived the same story as me, and we haven't had a real conversation ever.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we had a real conversation, and it made me realize that what I went through, he went through. And there's so much compassion as a son to understand the amount of stress and everything that was on your father. But that day, he truly showed you that you mattered, but you always did.
Yeah.
But there is a story that we tell ourselves that we don't. And so there's so much. I would imagine that a lot of your confidence, meaning how you got to where you are, is based on that day.
A lot of that day, and then I've had like an on and off relationship with my mom, just because I think we're very similar in a lot of aspects. So when you are really similar, you kind of butt heads. But she told me this, and like you said on my podcast, this is a true story, 100%. Like when I graduated high school, I never knew this until after all this stuff went down and I graduated and I came back, and definitely changed. Like I started being consistent in my life. And she said she kept telling me, she's like, my whole life with my brother and everything. She would say, "You're missing out on your son's life. You're missing out on your son's life. You're missing out on your son's life. You need to be there. You need to go do this. You need to tell him you love him. You need to go be there, be present, go talk to him, build a relationship." And he would like, and he kind of just put it off. And no, my dad, he's a quiet dude. So like, I never expected, like that was normal for me. But then my mom told me, after I told her about the amazing day that we had at graduation, she goes, "I told your dad your whole life that he was missing out. And guess what happened on the day you graduated high school?" I looked at him and he was crying. And I was like, "Why the hell are you crying?" I didn't say this was her. She's like, "Why the hell are you crying?" And he's like, "You were right. He's 18 and I missed out on his whole life. And we have no idea where he's going to go." Like I was already living by myself. I was homeless technically at the time from 17. Had a great mentor that took me in and really helped get me to like that point of making the move to go to basic training and stuff. And so I think that clicked for him. And from that day on, I think he kind of waited a little bit, but that was his chance, I think. And I haven't talked to him about it, but I think he saw that as the open window to really kind of make that shift. So, yeah.
Love it. Damn, we're crushing it. All right.
I know.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting emotional.
So
you get back from basic training, you're feeling good, you're rocking and rolling. So what started from there, and how did we got to where we are at today?
Yeah. So long story short, I found God in a lot of ways, and it became a good old Christian boy. And let's just say, like I went to this camp that I used to volunteer at as a kid, and just started working there. I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to go. It was still kind of brand new, life after military, even though it was just basic and AIT. So I was only gone for like 18 weeks. Just kind of trying to figure out where to go. And so I started working in this camp and was a camp pastor and kind of just doing like sermons for the staff and like just going with it. And it was loving life. Found like a higher purpose in a sense. And then from there, I decided to go to Moody Bible College in Spokane. And I had one of my best friends there. And so did that, but then realized it wasn't the life that I wanted. Like I took the scripture to heart and everything, but I just knew that even with that calling, I thought at the time, it just wasn't it. Like I just knew I wasn't fit to be a leader in that sense of like spiritual leadership and everything. And I had a lot to develop still. I was still young. I was 19. Started drinking a little bit and again, being in that crowd still and just kind of like having a foot in both worlds. So I got out of that. But then I guess this is where like the hospitality part like really kicked in. Came back home and started working at Harley Davidson, which was really cool. Got literally just a job offer from volunteering one day. I was unemployed and my buddy who worked at the food truck on the dealership was like, hey, I need help. I'm swamped. Come help me out. So I drove out there to help him. And because I had experience in food service, totally cool, like whatever, easy day. And the owner came out and was like, who the hell are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Will. I'm Tony's friend, blah, blah, blah. Like, just here to help. And he's like, all right, okay. And he watched for a little bit and then he left. And then later that, I think week, like a few days later, he called me. He's like, hey, I want you to be the event coordinator and marketing manager for the dealership. And I was like, what? I was like, I've never done marketing a day in my life. And he was like, yeah, but you're good with people and that's what I need. And I was like, okay. So I accepted the job and put my heart and soul into that and realized I love people. I love putting on events. And so like, that's kind of like the awakening of hospitality, which led into me starting a show for an event company in Spokane, moving back with my other best friend who I met through Bible college. He continued on and I didn't. And then we rekindled the friendship there. The show for an event company didn't really work out because, Uber. So hard to really keep up with something that's so instant and so cheap versus somebody calling and scheduling and paying hundreds of dollars to do it. So then I started working at a hotel, fell in love with the hotel and rose through the ranks there. The Davenport hotels will always be my number one starting point. And from there, I just realized how much I loved hospitality in the sense of lodging, restaurants, revenue management, marketing, guest experience, guest relation, storytelling, you name it, like all this stuff. And so, and I just never looked back since. And then started the podcast and all this other stuff.
And what are you doing currently?
Yeah, so I currently run Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast full time. That's like my 9 to 5 now, but more like 6 to midnight type job. And then me and 2 other business partners own a luxury vacation rental management company. So we manage big properties, 22,000 square foot castles, anywhere to 57 square foot mansions on 50 acres with a winery and all this other stuff. So that is what we do. I do the software and marketing, and they do like the investor relationships and taking care of the owners that own the real estate. And then the other one, she does all like the back end taxes and making sure that we're up to par with city, licenses and, all the payroll and everything like that.
And how long have y'all been doing that?
About a year. Yeah.
About a year?
Yeah.
I love it. And on what planet, because it's not talked about enough, and that's why I love your title. When did you, where did it come in your mind? Because it's not talked about. Like hospitality is not talked about enough. When did you decide that it was a good avenue to do the podcast, and kind of what was the genesis behind what you wanted to get out of it? Basically, what did you want to get across? Yeah,
that's a good question. So my last name is Slickers. With a last name like that, you kind of have to use it for whatever you can. And so my original company in Spokane was Slick Industries, and it was like a show for events and not marketing, but like weddings and all that other stuff. So when I moved from Spokane to Seaside, Oregon, and I started working for a couple of hotels and restaurants that were privately owned and managed, I still had that entrepreneur itch. I've always known I've always been an entrepreneur in the sense of when I was a kid, I used to draw cartoons and I would go sell them to my neighbor for $5 or $1.50 or whatever, in lemonade stands, you name it. I did that thing, never knew the word entrepreneur though. So, was never really taught. And then, so I had to move to the Oregon coast, had that entrepreneur itch still. And I was watching Gary Vee and Tony Robbins. They were doing an episode together. And I was like, these are my 2 favorite dudes. And Tony Robbins was like, hey, if you have a simple idea, I don't care what it is, go to anchor.fm, create your podcast, buy a $20 microphone and just do it. And then I was like, oh, shit, that's it. That's all I needed. I needed to figure out how to distribute an episode. I could figure out the rest. So I did that, and I came up with Slick Talk. I did a bunch of like Google search or like Apple Podcast search, like Slick Talk. There's a bunch of Slick Talks on there. And so I figured, well, I'm not going to be talking about random stuff. I'm going to be talking about like hotels and like what I love. I love hotels. So I looked through a hotel podcast and like did a search and found a couple that I liked that I thought were good, like a baseline to figure out like how to operate a podcast in like hospitality area. And some that I didn't like. And I was like, okay, there's two that are like really quality. They produce good content. They're a little boring with the audio, like production side of things. Like it wasn't exciting, even though the topic was cool. That makes sense. But there wasn't a bunch of good ones. And I was like, well, there needs to be a better podcast. Like I want my podcast to be, when people hear of hospitality, they think of Slick Talk, think again, like the excitement, the conversations that should be talked about and are not being talked about. And just the overall, like I was never mentored in hospitality. Nobody told me what ADR was or RevPAR or anything to figure all this stuff out myself. So I want to provide that knowledge for anybody who maybe have been in my shoes. And so I just started doing it. And I did Slick Talk. There was a bunch of them, bunch of hospitality ones. So I put Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, to make sure people knew when they clicked on my profile or my podcast, they knew the topic and what it would range in. So
I love it. And I think that you can create the what, the why, the when, the where, the how, all those things. But it truly is as simple as saying like, okay, there's this free thing. Here's a $20 bite. And I think that we as people put so much context around like who's going to listen, but like if you're doing it for yourself, right? And like the way that I look at it is like, I hope that everybody listens. I really do. Like, but I can't control when you listen to it. I can't control if you listen to it 3 years from now. But it's almost like a documentation of my journey in my life, right? And so if you look at it from that context, then it really does. My friend said it to me great. He said, if you couldn't distribute one episode for a month straight, would you still do it? And I go, of course. He goes, then who cares? Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the truth. Like,
well, when I first started, I did a bunch of episodes. And I didn't know like my sound or like how I wanted to go. I just started kind of like thinking, oh yeah, this is a good idea. And I liked it. So I went with it. And I didn't really listen to myself after I recorded it because it was like, F it, publish. And I saw like, oh, I have to listen. Oh my God, like somebody's listening. Or like, so I went up to 10 and then I went to 20. And then I had somebody reach out and say they wanted to be on the show after like 3 episodes. And I was like, what? No way. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just still figuring it out.
Yeah.
And, but I think as we get opportunities like that, and you can tell when you're onto something. And so just kind of ran with it. But I kind of agree. Like it's, you just got to start to pull triggers.
I thought about something the other day, and like, obviously I'm doing this on the road, and I'll probably see you in like a week.
Yeah.
we're going to kick it. But I think that in society, I think we've come to a conclusion that everything has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lighting needs to be perfect. The subtitles need to be perfect. The audio needs to be perfect. We no longer allow somebody to grow. Nobody's allowed to grow. You're not allowed to get better because you got to be better when you come out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? That Major League Baseball player that hits 50 home runs a year, he started in AAA, AA, single A. So I've made a choice that I allow you to throw darts at me because I'm putting content out there. And so I'm never allowed to have a misstep or a misword or, and that's the process. That's the juice. That's what's fun is watching somebody grow, and that's what Gary Vee talks about all the time. Y'all didn't see me for 10 years when I was doing that damn video and drinking wine. And now everybody thinks, oh, it's an overnight success. And so I commend you for that. I think it's amazing that you're not getting caught up in the moment and you're just pushing through and you're pushing forward. And so when you stepped out of hotels and you entered in this new business, 3 personalities, it's hard. Everybody needs to stick in their lane. What have you found? Because there's structure within working for a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put structure in an entrepreneurship business when you're flexible and you're getting started. So what have you found in the business world that excites you on kind of creating your own brand opposed to working for somebody else's?
Yeah, to answer that, which I love because I think rarely mention how we started, but I'm the only guy. I have two female partners, which are great.
Hey, by the way, that's the best move you ever done in your life.
I know, right? They keep me very in line and like in good. Like I'm very sporadic sometimes, as we can tell. But with that, in the beginning, when we first were like, okay, we have something good. They were on my show, the podcast, like a year, like almost a little over a year ago. And we just never stopped, or a year before, sorry. And we just never stopped talking, and it just kind of built up a friendship. And I was always trying to get them as a client. Like I wanted to consult for them, do revenue management, do all this other stuff. And we realized like, oh, we complement each other really perfectly. And so we decided to form this business. I was still managing a hotel full time. I was managing a 70 unit, all suite condominium, HOA resort type deal in Oregon. And so doing this full time with the podcast and then forming this, one of my business partners, Emily, she goes, well, I want all of us, before we even sign the legal document saying that we're in a business together, to answer these questions. And kind of like you said with yours on my show, you have all these new clients answer these like 5 questions. We kind of have a similar thing, like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What do you love to do? What are you good at? What do you want to learn more about? What excites you about this? Da, 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 da. And we all filled it out, and we like compared them, side by side. All right, Carlin's really good at the like paperwork and making sure that these deadlines are met, and organizing the structure of the day-to-day operations. Emily's really good at the investors, knowing what properties are great for real estate investment into a short-term rental. And I'm really good at using the software, updating the software, keeping things streamlined in that sense of marketing. And so we found our strengths and weaknesses from the get-go. And like we were brutally honest. Like Emily, who knew me more than Carlin did, she was like, Will, you and I are, if we did not have Carlin, like if we were just going to do this business together, we would fail immediately. You know why? Because we're too similar. We're too ADHD, where we're like, da 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 da. And Carlin's she is a steady, level-headed person.
Yep.
And she keeps us in line for sure. Like there's been times that we go, no, Carlin, you don't know what you're talking about. And then 2 weeks later, a week later, or 5 days later, a day later, she goes, oh yeah, who was wrong or who was right? Was that me? Yeah, it was. So it worked out. Like that was one of the best like decisions we made, was figuring out and being truly honest. Like if I lied, said, oh, I'm really good at deadlines and making sure that the taxes are paid. Oh, bro, we'd be hurting.
Yeah.
They'd be like, why the hell have you paid this quarter? Well, I didn't know this quarter was due. Well, yeah, you just got to be honest. And then, so like working for somebody else, I quit my job December 27th. I gave 3 weeks notice, and I was due to get a $10,000 signing bonus on January 1st. And I never, not signing bonus, but like yearly bonus as a manager. And I quit 3 days before getting it. 3 days. And my boss goes, huh?
Talk me through that.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
I'm just saying, talk me through that thing.
Yeah. No, gotcha. No, I look back and I'm like, oh, I could have used 10 grand, extra 10 grand. I saved up leading up to my time of quitting. This was at the time like the show was getting major sponsors, and so was making good money that I could put the money away and save up for going this venture, full time. But I didn't want to be a bonus-based leadership. And I saw a lot of that in hospitality, in the hotel world, where GMs were just pushing numbers and didn't care how many staff they went through in order to make their bonus. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to quit. I have, 10 grand in the bank or whatever in savings. And I'm just going to do it. I have another 10 grand coming with this other, sponsorship or whatever. I was like, whatever, I'll make it happen. It's sink or swim at this time. Right. So I quit, gave them 3 weeks. They told me to, stay on longer. I told them no, and I just went for it. I just knew that I didn't want to be that type of leader, so.
No, I love that. And I think that you made a choice, regardless of the money, that you knew ultimately, and it's funny because this has happened a couple times in the last week, just talking to clients or coaching clients, that no matter, regardless of the amount of money that you're making in that job, you're selling somebody else's dream. Mm-hmm. And what we're saying, guys, is it's not for everybody. We're not saying that you have to do that. But for us, for whatever reason, this is what we need. And it doesn't matter the dollar amount. It doesn't matter the amount of work that it takes. Is that this is what we've chosen to sign up for, because we know at the end of the day, we'll never be 100% fulfilled doing that for somebody else.
Yeah. I knew if I stayed a day later, if I stayed till December 28th or 29th or 30th, I wasn't going to be happy. I was going to continue to be miserable. And I gave him 3 weeks. So it was an extra week that most people, I could have quit on the spot. But I just knew, for me, the money wasn't yeah, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's great, especially when you're just now starting out. But like you said, when I was ready to build, I was like, you know what? The podcast is booked. The business is going to start booming. We're getting bookings, and already we have one property. We're going to scale, and we're going to work our procedures and kind of, structure a business. And I was excited more than anything to do that and just have that, free up that 50 hours or 60 hours or even 70 hours at times that I was spending at the hotel in order to really develop this new adventure. So that was more worth, the 50 hours to me was worth more than 10 grand.
Yeah. And I think what's important, and this is what I want to spin it here and kind of put a bow on it. I'm older. Not everybody wants to listen to me. They're like, look at that old fart. He doesn't, but you're younger and you're building a business. And a lot of my audience is younger. What is your advice to them if you had to give them, 3 or 5 things to take the leap, to make the decision, regardless of failure or regardless of success? It doesn't matter because it's all relative. But what would you tell them are the steps to take if they're thinking about getting out, or they're building a side hustle or something like that?
So there's a lot of people that will tell you never to build a safety net. If you build a safety net, you're just having a fallback, which is true in the sense if you're afraid of failure, so you're building this backup just because you don't believe in yourself. Well, I don't think it's the case 100%. I was during my time of working at the hotel, I was saving up extensively. I was living in this nice condo that I was damn, I don't need to be spending this much rent money, but I can cut expenses other ways. So I sold all my furniture. I was really cheap on the electric bill and the food costs and everything. So you can build a safety net of financial or not, and still give it your all, still sink or swim. Don't be afraid to protect yourself in that sense. A lot of people think, well, I only have $20 in the bank, and my mentor said that if I build something, I'm going to be building a safety net. Well, that's not the case. You need to protect yourself in that aspect. Don't be afraid to do that. Please do. Take an extra couple months and do that. But right. But another thing, be smart and listen to have mentors. I think is really key, or have just that friendship. I have my buddy who's one of my best friends. We don't talk on a daily basis, but we talk, if not weekly, almost monthly. And it's we just talk about thoughts. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about this, and blah, 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 blah. And we just bounce shit off of each other, and just have that person that's always going to not always question you as in really being annoying. Well, why do you do that? Well, why do you do that? But really question, okay, what's your thinking? Why did you spur that moment? What would make you want to pivot that way, when last week you told me you wanted to pivot this way? So have that mentor friendship that you can really trust, and really, find the people that will question things in the sense to make you think outside of your perspective. I always think perspective is huge. I don't know, the saying, you walk a mile in somebody's shoes, is important, but I think there's so many different perspectives. You don't need to walk a mile all the time in somebody else's shoes. You can walk 10 feet and still gain a new perspective. So find mentors, question things, but then also don't be afraid to try. Just keep trying. It only takes one idea out of 100, right? So if you try 100 things, try 100 things. If you try, let's say, 3 things and the third thing worked, go with it. and as long as you're happy and you love what you're doing, do that. But then I guess my final thing, like with it, just kind of from my experience, was that we're still young into this. Like I've been doing the podcast. I haven't had like a W-2 or like a full-time employer since 2019, quote unquote. But like that was just 6 months ago. Don't be afraid to really just trust yourself. There's going to be a moment where you mentally, I remember the day I quit smoking cigarettes was September 9th of 2019. I quit drinking to the extent that I was drinking at. Now I can enjoy 1 or 2 beers. But like I knew September 9th, I made the decision, man, I'm wasting $1,500 a month on cigarettes and alcohol and all these like pointless spendings. I'm tired of this. I want to work for myself. I want to build something. I want to grow. This is what I need. You have to make you can say it all you want until you really believe it. It won't take effect. And that day I believed it 100%. And I quit cold turkey, cigarettes and drinking. And now I obviously have a beer or two with like dinner, but, just like that day I remember being like, this is it. As I saw my bank account grow and grow and the podcast grow and grow, and not like the bank account grow into like, oh, I'm balling, but just grow to like and be comfortable to make that move and like know that, okay, it's getting to this point. What's the dollar amount or what's the content amount that I need to hit in order to take this full time? And then set a date. I set my date. It's December 27th. That was it. From September 9th to December 27th, I built and I built and I built and I built and I sacrificed. And, obviously it's not perfect. I'm not, in that sense of where I want to be in the future when I'm 35, 40, but I'm getting there. And so just knowing like have that goal, set it. And once you really truly believe it, you will see it flourish. You will see it take an action. You will see the I guess rewards of your hard work.
No, I love it. There's so much gold in all that. And, I think that we take on so much knowledge that it almost freezes us sometimes. When at the end of the day, my favorite quote that imperfect action leads to great results. And I think that you're always going to have roadblocks. You're always going to have building blocks in front of you, obstacles, but you're going to address them with the right mindset. You're going to address them with the right environment around you, the right people around you. And so those are just merely stepping stones to get to where you want to go. And, your story, as I'm excited. Do your business partners live near you or no?
We do now. Yeah. So I lived on the Oregon coast. And then when I quit, I lived there for like another 2 months in order to like figure out what I wanted to do. Was it stay there and be remote or was it be in person? And so I made the right move right before Corona hit to just move back home and to the area. So now we live within like 20 minutes.
I can't wait to have lunch with the whole crew. I'm excited.
I know, right? Right.
I'm super pumped. So you might leave the conversation ready to run through a brick wall, but that's just what happens when you have lunch with me. So, but no, I'm excited. And really just love the podcast, love what you're growing. Super excited about the switch that you made in your life. And it's freaking awesome, man. So dude, I just thank you so much for coming on. And how does everybody find out about you? The podcast, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again. It's been cool to connect with you via Facebook and then through Instagram, and now finding out we have a mutual network. It's kind of cool. It's like, all right, dope. Like, I think the first message you sent to me was another hospitality enthusiast. I thought I was the only one or something like that. Yeah. I was like, yes, I love it. So yeah, but thanks for having me on the show. It's been cool I've never really explored talking about this side, like this story of mine. So it's kind of cool to get to share that. But yeah, you guys can find me at slicktalkthepodcast.com, Slick Talk the Hospitality Podcast on Facebook, Slick Talk Pod on Instagram, and Wil Slickers. If you type in my name in Google, I'm pretty sure you'll find something on there. I'm one of the top ones. So all my stuff is there. And then, of course, the podcast is on every podcast platform as well as many other things. So that's where you guys can find me.
Well, dude, I appreciate it. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you share it with your friends. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.